We recently did a video of broadly covering the Chevy 350 5.7 liter small block, and everyone wanted to know more about the LT1s. So today we are going to discuss just LT1s. In 1970, which many of you made me aware in the last video that I was not alive then. However, from what I have heard and my understanding is that 1970 was peak muscle car scene. So GM released the LT1. This was their V8 performance engine, perfect for those beast mode vehicles. When LT1 purists say they're looking for LT1s, they are looking for first gen LT1s, cast iron block, high performance cast iron cylinder heads, flat tappet cam, packed a lot of horsepower, high compression. Now, it ran for 3 years, right? 70, 71, and 72. And oddly enough, each of these three engines are slightly different. And that's because as the years went on, as we know, emission standards started to change a little bit in this country. So with each year, we saw a slight decrease in compression and horsepower, despite a lot of the casting numbers being the same. Now, in 1972, the way that horsepower is measured changed across the board. We went to a net horsepower measurement system. So, horsepower looks a lot lower on paper, even though it is technically still the same. In 1992, with the release of the Corvette C4, GM re-released the LT1. These are the Gen 2 LT1s, and they are a bit different. They have sequential port fuel injection. They are going to run on roller cams. They have aluminum cylinder heads. And then we also saw the introduction of OptiSpark, which I have covered OptiSpark pretty heavily in a few other videos, so I'm not going to go into major details here. However, it was definitely new, cool technology for its time. And as we all know, nothing is without flaws. So it did come with a couple of downfalls as well. Now, this time frame, 92 to 97, was also a very transitional time frame for auto electronics in general, right? We saw the introduction of OBD1 and OBD2. And, just to keep it really simple, a non-OBD engine, if something breaks, you grab a wrench. If an OBD engine breaks, then you plug in your scan tool and you have a lot of assistance. Now, what is needed to create the spark and the fuel and the compression, all of that is the same. However, how all of that is controlled is different in an OBD versus a non-OBD engine. So that being said, with the LT1s up to 95, you likely have an OBD1 engine. 95, 96, and 97, you likely have an OBD2 engine. So all of that being said, 92 to 97, we saw this Gen 2 reintroduction of the LT1. And although it began strictly in the Corvette C4, it did spread to other applications throughout the years. It spread to things like the Caprice or the Camaro SS, the Fleetwoods, the D-body sedans. So there are a lot of different LT1s out there, and they do vary slightly. While the LT1 did spread to these other applications, the LT1s in the Corvette versus in the sedans are different. So the Corvettes are going to have your aluminum heads and your sedans are going to have your cast iron heads. The Corvettes are going to have the rectangular ports with the rounded edges. I'll pop up a picture here versus the D-shaped ports that you're going to find in the sedans. And this is because the Corvettes were still focused on this high performance build. Now the LT1s and the sedans were still potent and they were still powerful, but they were geared more towards like emissions regulations. To really simplify it, we are looking at different intake setups. We are looking at different camshafts. The camshaft in the Corvette was a little bit more progressive, different cooling systems. And then we also introduced the non-vented versus the vented OptiSpark system. So the LT1s from 92 to 97 definitely vary, and the Corvette LT1s are definitely different. And some of these are considered unicorns at this point. Now, last but not least, we've got these new LT1s that have come out, right? This is a totally different engine. This is a member of the LT engine family. So in 2013, GM released the LT engine family. This engine family are direct injected engines, and they all begin with the preface of LT. However, they do have different RPO codes. The LT1 from 2013 is actually a 6.2 liter, completely different displacement, completely different engine. And while it is still an awesome engine, it is not the classic LT1 that everyone knows and loves. I can cover that in a separate video, but it is not similar enough for me to cover here. So hopefully that answered some questions for you guys. If you need an LT1, give us a call. If we don't have it, we can build it.